Islam doesn't need a reformation. It already has the tools for renewal. What it needs is time, because change in Islam has never come from above, not from caliphs, not from kings. It's come from below, from the scholars, the teachers, the communities. And when ordinary Muslims begin to see modernity not as a threat, but as a benefit to their everyday lives, that's when real reform will begin. Until then, the debates go on, as they always have. In the year 833 AD, the most powerful man in the Muslim world, Caliph Al-Ma'mun, had a problem. Now, it wasn't money, armies, or territory. No, he had all of that. His problem was authority. Despite ruling the vast Abbasid Empire and being called a leader of the faithful, Al-Ma'mun didn't have a final say on Islamic law or doctrine. That power belonged, unofficially, to a loose, highly respected group of religious scholars called the ulama, and you couldn't just appoint yourself to this group. There was no exam, no diploma. You were either recognized by your peers in the public, or you weren't. This made religious consensus difficult, sometimes impossible. One of the big theological debates of the time was between the Mutazilites, a group of rationalist theologians, and more traditional Sharia scholars. The Mutazilites believed in free will. Their opponents believed in predestination, that God had already decided everything, including who ends up in hell. The stakes? Massive, because if everything is predetermined, then how could anyone be held responsible for sin? And what does that say about God's mercy? Leading scholars were brought in. They were told, say the Quran was created, or face prison, torture, even death. Some complied. But one man stood firm, Ahmad ibn Hanbal, a Sharia expert and, by the way, a part-time baker. He was beaten, jailed, interrogated by the caliph himself, but refused to recant, and eventually he won. After 15 years of resistance, the Mina collapsed. No ruler ever again tried to impose a single religious doctrine on all of Islam. This moment, this failure, changed Islamic history forever. Because unlike Christianity, Islam never developed a pope, never built a central religious authority. And that has huge implications for how Islamic law and theology work even today. Islamic jurisprudence is now based on multiple schools of thought. Scholars can issue legal opinions, fatwas, but other scholars can just disagree. There are no bishops to enforce doctrine, just respected voices, each with their own following. And yes, that means you can literally Google your problem. Find a fatwa that suits you. And if you don't like it, find another one. It's religious pluralism and chaos at the same time. But here's the twist. While Islam avoided centralized control, the defeat of Al-Ma'mun also spelled the end of rationalism as a dominant force in theology. Over time, the Mutazilites were sidelined. New schools like the Ash'ari and Maturidi became orthodox. They allowed some room for reason, but always under the shadow of revelation. And leading that shift was the towering figure of Al-Ghazali. In 1095, Al-Ghazali shocked the intellectual world by walking away from his high-powered job in Baghdad. He wrote a searing critique of Islamic philosophers called The Incoherence of the Philosophers. He wasn't anti-reason, but he believed that reason alone can't reach absolute truth. Only divine revelation can do that. His legacy is complicated. Some call him a mystic. Others blame him for turning Islamic thought away from science and progress. But the real story is more nuanced. And then there's Ibn Taymiyyah, the 14th century firebrand who took the conservative turn even further. He rejected philosophy, mysticism, innovation, everything but the Quran and authentic Hadiths. His ideas would inspire Salafism centuries later, a movement that seeks to return Islam to a supposed golden age of purity. You might know it better through one of its early branches, Wahhabism, the ideology that helped found modern Saudi Arabia. So how did this happen? How did a civilization once renowned for its philosophers, scientists, and pluralism become associated, at least in Western eyes, with religious conservatism? Part of the answer lies outside Islam. In the 18th and 19th centuries, the Islamic world was shocked by European domination. Napoleon crushed Egypt. Britain dismantled India's Muslim empires. The Ottomans were called the sick man of Europe, and many Muslims, understandably, began to ask, where did we go wrong? Some turned to reform. Figures like Muhammad Abdu in Egypt argued that Islam was a religion of reason and compatible with modernity. But they faced a huge obstacle: despotic rulers. Kings and generals wanted modernization without democracy. They wanted science, but not liberalism. The West, meanwhile, often backed those despots because they brought stability. The result? Today, the Muslim world is religiously conservative not because of Islam's theology alone, but because of centuries of political trauma, colonialism, and suppressed reform. And yet, the tradition of debate, diversity, and intellectual exploration is still alive. It's there in the books, in the classrooms, in the scholars quietly working today to reconcile Islam and modernity.
Islam has the tools it needs for renewal: its rich history, its debate culture, its diversity of voices. The question is, will we listen? If this video made you think, subscribe for more deep dives into history, religion, and philosophy.